I spent 40 years saving $1 million for my grandchildren's future. My 70th birthday seemed like the perfect time to surprise them with this life-changing gift. Instead, I sat alone at an empty table while they celebrated with the woman who had destroyed my marriage decades ago. My name is Eleanor Winters. For most of my life, I was known simply as Nana Ellie to my 3 grandchildren, Sophie, Marcus, and little Lily. I never had much growing up in rural Minnesota, but I promised myself my family would have more. My daughter Olivia was my only child, and when she married James, I treated him like the son I never had. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I worked as a nurse for over 40 years, starting in the 1970s when the pay was barely enough to get by. But I was careful with money, meticulous, some might say. While my colleagues upgraded their cars or took lavish vacations, I drove the same reliable sedan for 20 years and used my vacation days to babysit my grandchildren. It wasn't just about being frugal. From the moment I held my first grandchild, Sophie, I started a special savings account. Every month without fail, I would deposit whatever I could spare. Sometimes just $50, other times a few hundred when I picked up extra shifts during holidays. I invested cautiously in index funds and watched that nest egg grow year after year. By the time I was approaching retirement, I had managed to save just over $1 million. Not through any windfall or inheritance, but through decades of persistent saving and careful planning. This wasn't my retirement fund. I had a separate pension from the hospital. This money was solely for my grandchildren. My plan was simple but meaningful. I would divide the money equally among Sophie, Marcus, and Lily when I turned 70. Sophie was in her final year of college, Marcus was starting his freshman year, and Lily was just entering high school. The money would set them up for success. Pay off Sophie's student loans, cover Marcus's education completely, and secure Lily's college future with plenty left over for them to buy homes or start businesses. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom house that I'd owned outright for years. The kitchen was small, but always filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies when the grandkids visited. The backyard had a maple tree where we hung a tire swing that had delighted all 3 grandchildren through different stages of their lives. Olivia and James lived across town in a much larger house. James worked in commercial real estate, and, while they were comfortable, they weren't wealthy. The economic downturn 10 years ago had hit them hard, and they'd struggled to maintain their lifestyle. I'd helped them out several times with loans that I never expected to be repaid. $30,000 for a roof repair, $15,000 when James was between jobs, another $20,000 for Olivia to start a small business that ultimately failed. Despite these financial challenges, they never knew about the $1 million fund. I wanted it to be a surprise, something magical that would arrive at just the right moment in my grandchildren's lives. Perhaps it was old-fashioned of me, but I believed there was value in working hard and not expecting windfalls. My 70th birthday fell on a Saturday in April. The weather was perfect, warm sunshine with a light breeze that carried the scent of spring flowers through my neighborhood. I had spent the previous day preparing a feast: pot roast with rosemary potatoes, Marcus's favorite, homemade mac and cheese, Lily's request whenever she visited, and a strawberry cream cake, Sophie's preferred dessert since childhood. The ski dining room table was set with my best china, the set I had carefully collected piece by piece from antique stores over decades. 3 small gift boxes sat at the center of the table, each containing an envelope with bank details and a letter explaining how proud I was of each grandchild. I had asked everyone to arrive by 5 p.m. I put the finishing touches on the table, adjusted the flowers in their vase, and sat down to wait with nervous excitement fluttering in my chest. 5 o'clock came and went. By 5:30, I sent a text message to Olivia. "Everything's ready. Hope you're on your way." No response. At 6:15, I called James. The call went straight to voicemail, By 7, I had called each of them multiple times. The pot roast had dried out. The mac and cheese had formed a skin on top. The ice cream meant to accompany the cake had melted back into the freezer. At 8:30, my phone finally chimed with a text from Olivia. "So sorry, Mom. Completely forgot today was the dinner. Sophie had a thing at school, and then we all decided to go to Catherine's for dinner since we were already on that side of town. Can we reschedule for next weekend?" Catherine. The name hit me like a physical blow. Catherine Weber had been my husband Robert's administrative assistant for 15 years. She was also the woman he left me for after 31 years of marriage. The divorce had been finalized just months after Lily was born. Robert had missed the birth of his youngest grandchild because he was on a cruise with Catherine. For years after the divorce, Robert and Catherine lived in Arizona. I rarely spoke about them, and the grandchildren knew very little about the circumstances of our separation. Robert sent birthday cards with modest checks, but he wasn't present for school plays, graduations, or holiday gatherings. 3 months ago, I had heard from Olivia that Robert and Catherine had moved back to town. Robert's health was declining, early-stage Parkinson's, and they wanted to be closer to family. I hadn't seen him yet, and truthfully, I wasn't eager to. But now, on my 70th birthday, my family had chosen to have dinner with them instead of me. I sat alone at my dining room table, surrounded by cooling food and unopened gifts, and felt a hollowness expand inside my chest. 40 years of saving, countless extra shifts, thousands of small sacrifices, all for grandchildren who couldn't spare a single evening to celebrate with me. I picked up one of the envelopes and turned it over in my hands. Inside was Sophie's portion of the $1 million, enough to change her life in an instant. Did Dee tell me she deserve it? Did any of them? For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to wonder, what would my life have been like if I had spent some of this money on myself? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from the past. Sophie's tiny fingers gripping mine as she took her first steps, Marcus crying on my shoulder after losing a baseball game, Lily proudly showing me her science fair ribbons. Had I imagined the closeness we shared? Had I been nothing more than a convenient babysitter, an ATM when their parents needed cash? Around 2 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep. I made a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, still cluttered with the remnants of the birthday dinner nobody ate. On impulse, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook, something I rarely did. There they were. Posted just 3 hours earlier. Photos of my family laughing around a dining table much larger than mine. Sophie with her arm around Catherine, both holding wine glasses. Marcus wearing the sweater I had knitted for his birthday last year. Lily perched on Robert's lap, her head resting against his chest. And at the center of the table, a lavish cake, with the words, "Welcome home, Grandpa and Grandma Kate," in elegant blue frosting. Grandma Kate. The room seemed to tilt around me. Catherine wasn't just the woman who had stolen my husband. She had somehow claimed my grandchildren too, and they had given her my title, the name I had earned through countless nights of fever tending, homework helping, and nightmare soothing. I scrolled through the comments, each one a fresh wound. "So happy to finally have everyone together," Olivia had written. "Best family dinner ever," from Sophie. And most painful of all, a comment from Lily. "Love you, Grandma Kate. Your stories about Paris are so amazing." I had never been to Paris. Despite decades of saving, I'd never left the country. Vacations were spent visiting family or taking the grandkids to nearby lakes. International travel was a luxury I had postponed, always thinking there would be time later, after the grandchildren were taken care of. I closed my laptop, unable to look any longer. My teacup sat untouched, the liquid now cold. The next morning, my phone finally rang. It was Olivia. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Mom, I'm so sorry about last night, she began, her voice carrying that familiar tone, the one she used when she needed something. It was just such a hectic day, and when Dad reminded us it was their housewarming dinner. Your father knew it was my 70th birthday, I said quietly. A pause. Well, yes, but he said you'd understand. It's been so long since the kids have spent time with him, and Catherine went to so much trouble with the dinner. I spent 2 days cooking, I said. I used vacation days from the hospital. Mom, please don't make this difficult. We can celebrate your birthday next weekend. Catherine was even saying we should do something special for you. Maybe at their place since it's bigger. The audacity stole my breath. They wanted me to celebrate my birthday at the home of the woman who had replaced me, as if that would make everything better. No, I said simply. Mom, when did Robert move back exactly? I asked, cutting her off. Another pause, longer this time. About 3 months ago. And you didn't tell me until a few weeks ago. Why? We weren't sure how you'd take it. Dad thought it might upset you. And how long have the children been calling her Grandma Kate? The silence stretched. Finally, Olivia sighed. Look, it just happened naturally. Catherine has been so generous with them. She took Sophie to New York for her 16th birthday. She helped Marcus with his college applications. And she's been teaching Lily photography. Each revelation was another crack in my heart. While I'd been working extra shifts to save for their future, Catherine had been spending Robert's money to buy their affection. Mom, are you still there? Yes, I managed to say. Has Robert been generous financially as well? Well, yes. He paid for Sophie's study abroad semester in Italy. And he's covering Marcus's dorm fees. He says it's to make up for not being around when they were younger. The irony was almost too much to bear. Robert, who had barely acknowledged the grandchildren for years, was now playing the role of magnanimous grandfather, while I, who had never missed a school play or sports game, was an afterthought. And did you tell him about the roof? And James's unemployment? And your failed boutique? I asked. What? No, of course not, Olivia replied quickly. Too quickly. Olivia, don't lie to me. Not now. She sighed again. Fine. Yes, Dad helped us out with some expenses. But that's different. He's trying to make amends. With my money, I said flatly. What are you talking about? The divorce settlement, Olivia. The house he lives in, the trips he takes, the generous gifts he gives. Those came from our shared assets. Assets I helped build during our marriage while raising you alone when he worked late nights. Nights I later discovered were spent with Catherine. Mom, that was 20 years ago. Can't you let it go? I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. I need to go now. I have things to take care of. Wait, when should we come over for your birthday? Next Saturday? Or would Sunday be better? I thought about the 3 envelopes sitting on my dining table. About 40 years of sacrifices for children who couldn't sacrifice one evening for me. Don't worry about it, I said. My birthday's passed. There's nothing to celebrate. I ended the call before she could respond. For hours, I sat in my silent house, wrestling with emotions I'd suppressed for decades. Anger at Robert, disappointment in Olivia, heartbreak over the grandchildren, and something else, a strange, unfamiliar feeling simmering beneath it all, indignation, self-respect, the dawning realization that I deserved better. That evening, I gathered the 3 envelopes from the dining table. One by one, I opened them and removed the bank information. I didn't tear them up. That would have been too dramatic, too final. Instead, I placed them carefully in my desk drawer. Not destroyed, just postponed. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop and searched for solo travel for seniors. The screen filled with images of smiling older women exploring ancient ruins, hiking through lush forests, and dining at sidewalk cafes in European cities. Women my age, living lives I'd never allowed myself to imagine. The next day, I gathered my courage and did something else I'd never done. I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Marissa Jackson specialized in life transitions for older adults. Her office was warm and inviting, with plants in every corner and paintings of serene landscapes on the walls. "What brings you here today, Eleanor?" she asked, after I settled into a comfortable armchair. "I think I've spent my entire life living for other people," I said, surprised by the directness of my own words. "And I'm not sure who I am without that." Dr. Jackson nodded, her eyes kind. "That's a profound realization. What prompted it?" I told her everything. The birthday dinner, the Facebook photos, the decades of sacrifice, the $1 million I'd saved for grandchildren who called another woman grandma. "It sounds like you're experiencing a perfect storm of betrayal, disappointment, and identity crisis," she said when I finished. "But I also hear something else in your story: resilience and the beginnings of self-discovery." "Is it selfish?" I asked hesitantly, "to want something for myself after all this time?" "Eleanor," she said gently, "taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Think of it like the oxygen masks on airplanes. You have to secure your own before helping others." "But what if it's too late? I'm 70 years old," she smiled. "I have clients in their 80s and 90s who are discovering new passions, taking risks, and reinventing themselves. It's never too late to start living authentically." I left that first session feeling both emotionally drained and strangely energized. On the drive home, I passed a small boutique with a grand opening sign in the window. On impulse, I pulled over and went inside. The store specialized in travel clothing and accessories for women. A friendly sales associate named Diane approached me. "Just browsing?" she asked with a warm smile. "Actually," I said, surprising myself again, "I think I might be planning a trip." "Wonderful. Where to?" I hesitated only a moment. "Paris. I think I want to see Paris." For the next hour, Diane helped me select a lightweight, wrinkle-resistant dress, comfortable walking shoes, and a small crossbody bag perfect for sightseeing. As I handed over my credit card, spending more on myself in 1 hour than I had in years, I felt a mixture of guilt and exhilaration. When I arrived home, there were 3 missed calls from Olivia and a text message. "Mom, please call me back. The kids are worried about you." I placed my new purchases on the bed and stared at the phone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. First, I needed to talk to someone else. The next morning, I called Patricia Gonzalez, my financial advisor of 15 years. "Eleanor," she greeted me warmly, "I was worried when you didn't come in for your annual review last month. Is everything all right?" "I need to make some changes," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "To the investment fund for my grandchildren." There was a brief pause. "Of course. Would you like to schedule an appointment?" "As soon as possible." 2 hours later, I sat in Patricia's sleek downtown office. Charts and graphs of my investment portfolio glowed on her computer screen. The $1 million fund for my grandchildren was displayed prominently, a neat upward trajectory spanning 4 decades of disciplined saving. "Before we discuss changes," Patricia said, folding her hands on her desk, "may I ask what prompted this? You've been remarkably consistent with your investment strategy for as long as I've known you." I took a deep breath and told her about my birthday, about the revelation that followed, about the growing certainty that I needed to reclaim some portion of my life and my money for myself. Patricia listened without interruption, her expression shifting from professional interest to genuine concern. "Eleanor," she said when I finished, "from a purely financial perspective, You've created an admirable legacy for your grandchildren. But from a personal perspective, she hesitated. What? I prompted. May I speak frankly? I nodded. I've been your advisor for 15 years, and in that time, I've watched you make sacrifice after sacrifice for your family. You drive a 12-year-old car with 200,000 miles on it. You haven't updated your home since the early 2000s. You've mentioned wanting to travel, but you've always put it off. She leaned forward. Meanwhile, you've helped your daughter and son-in-law financially multiple times, often without being repaid. I shifted uncomfortably. Hearing it laid out so starkly made me feel both validated and foolish. What are you suggesting? I asked. I'm suggesting that it might be time to reassess the allocation of your assets. The Grandchildren's Fund has grown significantly. Would redirecting a portion of it, say 15 or 20%, for your own use, significantly impact their futures? I did the mental math. Even if I took $200,000 for myself, each grandchild would still receive over $266,000, more money than I'd had at any point in my life until now. What would you do with that money, Eleanor? Patricia asked gently. If there were no obligations, no expectations, just you and your own desires. The question caught me off guard. What did I want? After decades of putting everyone else first, I barely knew. I'd travel, I said finally. Not just to Paris, but to all the places I've read about and never seen. I'd renovate my kitchen with the granite countertops I've always wanted. I'd buy a new car, nothing flashy, just something reliable with good safety features. I trailed off, overwhelmed by possibilities I'd never allowed myself to consider. Patricia smiled. That sounds like a wonderful start, and completely reasonable given your overall financial picture. She turned to her computer and began typing. Let me show you what this might look like. For the next hour, we crafted a new financial plan. I would move $200,000 from the Grandchildren's Fund into a new account for my personal use. The remaining $800,000 would stay invested for the grandchildren, but with new distribution terms. Instead of a lump sum at my 70th birthday, they would receive funds for legitimate educational expenses as needed. The bulk of their inheritance would come in staged payments starting when they each turned 30, with provisions for matching retirement contributions. This protects them and you, Patricia explained. It ensures the money goes toward building their futures, not just funding immediate desires. As she printed the paperwork for me to sign, Patricia asked, Have you thought about your will and broader estate planning? I hadn't, at least not recently. My will was simple, everything to Olivia, with the expectation that she would manage the grandchildren's inheritance. Given what you've shared today, Patricia said carefully, you might want to consider more specific provisions. She was right. If I couldn't trust Olivia to show up for my birthday dinner, how could I trust her to honor my wishes after I was gone? By the time I left Patricia's office, I had a new financial plan, an appointment with an estate attorney, and a strange, unfamiliar feeling in my chest. Something like freedom. On the drive home, I passed the hospital where I'd worked for nearly 4 decades. On impulse, I pulled into the visitors' parking lot and went inside. The main lobby had been renovated since my retirement 5 years ago, but the bustling energy remained the same. Doctors in white coats hurried past, families huddled in conversation. Volunteers in blue vests directed visitors with gentle efficiency. I took the elevator to the 5th floor, pediatrics, where I'd spent the majority of my career. The pediatric wing had always been my favorite, despite the heartbreak that sometimes came with it. There was something about helping children through illness that filled me with purpose. Eleanor Winters, is that you? I turned to see Nancy Delgado, the pediatric charge nurse who had been my protégé in my final years at the hospital. Nancy? I smiled genuinely for what felt like the first time in days. How are you? Overworked and underpaid, she laughed, giving me a quick hug. But loving every minute. What brings you back to the battlefield? I shrugged. Just feeling nostalgic, I suppose. Nancy studied my face. Everything okay? You look. She trailed off, searching for the right word. I look how? I prompted. Different, she decided. Not bad different. Just, I don't know. Like something's changed. Everything's changed, I admitted. Or maybe I'm finally changing. Nancy glanced at her watch. I'm due for a break. Want to grab a coffee and tell me about it? In the hospital cafeteria, over mediocre coffee and stale muffins, I found myself pouring out the story yet again. Nancy listened with the same attentiveness she showed her young patients. Those ungrateful little, she began when I finished. They're not bad people, I interrupted, surprising myself with the defense. They're just caught up in their own lives. They don't see me as a person with needs and dreams, just as reliable old Nana Ellie who'll always be there. Nancy snorted. That doesn't make it right. After everything you've done for them, missing your 70th birthday is beyond inconsiderate. I sighed. I know. But I'm partly responsible too. I've spent so long putting them first that they've come to expect it. So what are you going to do? I'm going to Paris, I said, the decision crystallizing as I spoke the words. And then wherever else I want to go. I'm going to see the world before I leave it. Nancy's face broke into a wide smile. Now that sounds like a plan. When do you leave? I don't know yet. I need to get a passport for starters. I've never had one. Never? I shook my head. Robert, and I talked about taking a European vacation for our 25th anniversary. But then Olivia announced she was pregnant with Lily, and somehow we never got around to it. After the divorce. I trailed off, not needing to explain further. Nancy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Well, it's never too late to start. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing exactly the right thing. As we said goodbye, in the hospital lobby, Nancy hesitated, then said, You know, Eleanor, we're always short on volunteers in pediatrics. If you're looking for something meaningful to do between trips around the world, the kids would love having someone read to them or just sit with them when their parents can't be there. The suggestion touched something deep inside me, a reminder that I had value beyond my role as a grandmother, that I could still make a difference in children's lives even if they weren't my own flesh and blood. I'll think about it, I promised. Driving home, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. When I finally did, I found more missed calls and increasingly worried texts from Olivia, and to my surprise, a voicemail from Sophie. Nana? Her voice sounded uncertain, almost childlike. Mom's freaking out because you're not answering. Are you okay? Call me back, please? I should have felt guilty for worrying them. Instead, I felt a strange sort of satisfaction. For once, they were thinking about me instead of the other way around. At home, I fixed myself a proper dinner, not leftovers, not a microwave meal, but grilled salmon with roasted vegetables and a glass of good white wine. I ate at the dining room table, using my best china. The same china that had sat unused on my birthday. After dinner, I called Sophie back. Nana! Relief flooded her voice. Where have you been? Mom's been trying to reach you all day. I had appointments, I said simply. I'm fine, Sophie. Just busy. Mom said you were upset about missing your birthday dinner. We're all really sorry about that. We want to make it up to you. I took a sip of wine before responding. Sophie, do you know what I was planning to give you all on my birthday? No? She sounded confused by the question. I've been saving money for you, Marcus and Lily, since you were born. A substantial amount of money that would have paid off your student loans, covered Marcus's college expenses, and secured Lily's education. Silence on the other end of the line, then... Wait, what? Really? How much money? The eagerness in her voice made me wince. Not, I'm sorry we hurt you, or, that was so thoughtful of you. Just, How much money? It doesn't matter now, I said. I've decided to make some changes to how and when the money will be distributed. What kind of changes? Her voice had sharpened, sounding remarkably like Olivia when she was anxious. I'll explain everything once I've finalized the details, but for now, please tell your mother I'm fine and there's no need to worry about me. But Nana. I need to go now, Sophie. I have plans to make. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and typed expedited passport application into the search bar. Then, solo tours Paris seniors and best time to visit France. By midnight, I had a list of things I needed to do. Apply for a passport, book a medical checkup to ensure I was fit for international travel, research accommodations in Paris, and find a travel agent who specialized in solo trips for seniors. For the first time in years, I fell asleep excited about the future, my future. The next morning, I was awakened by persistent knocking at my front door. I glanced at the clock, 7:15 a.m., too early for a casual visit. I pulled on my robe and made my way downstairs. Through the peephole, I could see Olivia on my porch, her expression a mixture of worry and irritation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Mom! She pushed past me into the foyer. I've been trying to reach you for days. Why haven't you been answering your phone? Good morning to you too, Olivia, I said calmly. I've been busy, and I needed some time to think. She stared at me, taking in my appearance. Are you sick? You look different. I'm perfectly healthy, I assured her. Would you like some coffee? Without waiting for her answer, I walked to the kitchen and began measuring grounds into the coffee maker. Olivia followed, her high heels clicking on the tile floor. Mom, what's going on? Sophie said you told her something about money you've been saving. For the kids? And now you're changing your mind? I turned to face her. I didn't say I was changing my mind. I said I was making changes to how and when the money will be distributed. But why? Is this because of the birthday dinner? Mom, I said I was sorry. About that. We all are. But to punish the kids financially over one mistake seems extreme. I pressed the start button on the coffee maker and leaned against the counter. This isn't about punishment, Olivia. It's about me finally recognizing that I deserve to enjoy some of what I've worked for all these years. What does that mean? Exactly? It means I've moved some of the money, about 20%, into an account for my personal use. The rest will still go to the children, but not as an immediate lump sum. They'll receive funds for education as needed, and the bulk of the money when they're older and presumably more financially responsible. Olivia's face flushed. You can't do that. You promised that money would go to the kids. I never promised anything, I said firmly. I never even told you about the money until Sophie mentioned it yesterday. How did you know about it, by the way? She shifted uncomfortably. James and I were helping you organize your tax documents last year, remember? We saw the investment statements. And you didn't think to ask me about them? We figured you were saving it for the kids. That's what grandparents do. I laughed despite myself. Is that what grandparents do? Just save money and hand it over? Nothing else matters? Olivia had the decency to look embarrassed. You know that's not what I meant, isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like I'm only valued for what I can provide. Childcare when you're busy, money when you need it, a sympathetic ear when you're troubled. But when it comes to celebrating a milestone in my life, suddenly, everyone has something more important to do. That's not fair, she protested. We love you. The kids adore you. Do they? Then why are they calling Catherine Grandma Kate? Her face fell. You saw the Facebook photos. Yes, I did. The coffee maker beeped, signaling it was done brewing. I poured 2 mugs, handing one to Olivia. We moved to the kitchen table and sat across from each other. Look, Mom, Olivia began, wrapping her hands around the mug. I know this is awkward, but Dad and Catherine have been together for 20 years now. The kids have known Catherine their whole lives. It's natural that they'd develop a relationship. With her, too. I understand that, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. What I don't understand is why it was kept secret from me. Why you didn't tell me Robert and Catherine had moved back 3 months ago. Why the children's relationship with them has been hidden. We were trying to protect your feelings. Were you? Or were you avoiding an uncomfortable conversation? There's a difference, Olivia. She stared into her coffee. Maybe a bit of both, she admitted after a long moment. I took a sip of my coffee before continuing. Here's what I think happened. Robert and Catherine moved back, probably to a nice house. They started entertaining, having you and the kids over for dinners, making a big show of how they wanted to reconnect. Catherine, with Robert's money, began lavishing attention and gifts on the grandchildren. Trips to New York, help with college applications, photography lessons for Lily. Olivia's eyes widened. How did you know about those things? You told me, remember? When I asked why the children call her Grandma Kate. I paused, then continued. What you didn't say, but what I suspect, is that Robert has also been helping you and James financially. Her silence was confirmation enough. The roof repair? James's period of unemployment? Your failed boutique? Did Robert cover those expenses? He offered. Olivia said defensively. He said he wanted to make up for not being more present when I was growing up. With money, I noted. Just like I've been doing. Except the difference is that I was present. I was there for every milestone, every skinned knee, every school play. While Robert was building his new life with Catherine, I was building a college. Fund penny by penny. Olivia stared at her coffee. It wasn't like we were trying to replace you, she said quietly. It just happened. Dad suddenly wanted to be involved, and Catherine was so eager to connect with the kids. And the money made it easier to welcome them back with open arms, I finished for her. She looked up sharply. That's not fair. Isn't it? When Robert left us, he left us struggling. I had to work double shifts just to keep our heads above water. And now that he's wealthy and retired, suddenly he's father and grandfather of the year? I shook my head. I'm not naive, Olivia, and I'm not as fragile as you seem to think. So this is revenge, she said, taking back the money you saved for the kids because you're angry at Dad. This has nothing to do with Robert, I said firmly. This is about me finally recognizing that I deserve something for myself after all these years of sacrifice. And what exactly are you planning to do with this money? She asked, a hint of derision in her voice. I'm going to travel, I said. I'm going to renovate my kitchen. I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to live, Olivia, instead of just existing. For everyone else's benefit. She stared at me as if I'd announced I was joining the circus. Travel? By yourself? Mom, be serious. You've never even been out of the state by yourself. I've never had the chance, I pointed out. I was too busy raising you alone and then helping with your children. But what about the kids? Sophie's struggling with student loans. Marcus needs tuition money. Lily will be applying for colleges soon. They're counting on that money. They'll still get most of it, I assured her. Just not all at once, and not right now. The new plan ensures their education will be funded. They'll receive the bulk of the inheritance when they're more established, in their 30s. Their 30s? Olivia's voice rose. Mom, that's ridiculous. They need that money now. Do they? Or do they just want it now? There's a difference. Olivia, a difference I'm only beginning to understand myself. She pushed back from the table abruptly. I can't believe you're doing this to us. After everything we've been through as a family. That's just it, I said quietly. I don't feel like we are a family anymore. Not in the ways that matter. You all have your lives with Robert and Catherine now. I'm just an afterthought. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time any of you came to visit just to spend time with me? Not because you needed money or childcare or a sympathetic ear, but just because you wanted to see me? Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to produce an answer. "That's what I thought," I said. We sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Olivia spoke again, her voice softer. "What do you want from us, Mom? Just tell me, and we'll do it." I considered her question carefully. What did I want? An apology? More visits? Regular phone calls? None of those things would matter if they weren't genuine. "I want you to see me," I said finally. "Not just as your mother or the children's grandmother, but as Eleanor, a woman with her own desires and dreams and disappointments. I want to be included in your lives because you want me there, not because you feel obligated or because you need something from me. And if that's not possible, then I need to focus on building a life that fulfills me, even if that life doesn't revolve around all of you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "You make it sound like we don't care about you at all." "I know you care," I said gently. "But caring isn't the same as respecting, and lately I haven't felt very respected." She wiped away a tear. "So what happens now?" "Now I move forward with my plans. I've started the process for getting a passport. I'm researching trips to Paris. I've consulted with a kitchen designer, and I've made an appointment to test drive some new cars." "And what about us? The kids will be heartbroken when they find out about the money." "Will they be heartbroken about the money?" I asked. "Or about the relationship with me?" Olivia didn't answer. "You can tell them whatever you think best," I continued. "But I hope you'll be honest, both about why I've made these changes and about your own role in the situation." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. "I should go. James will be wondering where I am." "Before you leave," I said, "there's something else you should know. I've also made an appointment with my attorney to update my will. Given everything that's happened, I think it's prudent to be more specific about my wishes." Her face paled. "Mom, please don't do anything drastic. I'm not cutting you out if that's what you're worried about," I assured her. "But I am going to ensure that my wishes are respected, even after I'm gone." At the door, Olivia hesitated, then turned back. "To me? Do you hate us now?" she asked in a small voice that reminded me of her childhood. "Of course not," I said, surprised by the question. "I love you all very much. That hasn't changed. What's changing is how I love myself." After she left, I sat on my porch swing, watching the spring flowers sway in the gentle breeze. The confrontation had been difficult, but also cathartic. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own needs without feeling guilty about it. My phone chimed with a text message. It was Olivia. "We're having a family meeting tonight to discuss everything. The kids want to know if they can come see you tomorrow." I considered the request. Was I ready to face the grandchildren? To see their disappointment when they learned about the changes to their inheritance? To hear their excuses about my birthday? But then again, wasn't this exactly what I'd asked for? To be included? To be seen? "Yes," I texted back. "But tell them to come prepared for an honest conversation. No more secrets or half-truths." Another chime. "I will. And Mom, I'm sorry. For everything." I put the phone down without responding. Words were easy. It was actions that would reveal whether anything had truly changed. That afternoon, I drove to the passport office and submitted my application with expedited processing. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, smiled as she reviewed my forms. "First, passport?" she asked. "Yes," I admitted. "I've waited a long time for this." "Any special trip planned?" "Paris," I said, surprised by the surge of excitement I felt just saying the word. "I'm finally going to see Paris." She stamped my application and handed me a receipt. "Well, Eleanor, I hope Paris is everything you've dreamed of." "I think it will be," I replied. "But more importantly, I think I'm finally becoming everything I've dreamed of." As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. The confrontation with Olivia had been painful, but necessary. And tomorrow would bring another difficult conversation with the grandchildren. But for the first time in decades, I was facing these challenges as Eleanor Winters, not just as mom or Nana Ellie, but as a woman with her own identity, her own desires, and her own path forward. The next day dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring morning that seemed at odds with the emotional storm brewing inside me. I had slept fitfully, rehearsing what I would say to my grandchildren, imagining their reactions, preparing myself for their disappointment, or worse, their indifference. I spent the morning cleaning, though the house was already spotless. I baked chocolate chip cookies, a peace offering perhaps, or simply a way to busy my hands while my mind churned. The familiar rhythm of measuring, mixing, and baking was soothing, a reminder of simpler times when the children were young and a fresh-baked cookie could solve almost any problem. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my hair, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. All three of my grandchildren stood on the porch. Sophie, at 22, looked professional in a blazer and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Marcus, 18, towered over his sisters, his lanky frame awkward in a button-down shirt that suggested Olivia had insisted he dress up for this visit. Lily, at 15, looked painfully young in her floral dress, her hair in braids reminiscent of how I used to style it when she was small. "Hi, Nana," Sophie said, her usual confidence dimmed by uncertainty. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. They filed into the living room, perching uncomfortably on the edges of the furniture like visitors in a museum, not the children who had once built pillow forts on this very floor. "Would anyone like a cookie?" I offered. "They're fresh from the oven." "Yes, please," Marcus said quickly, relief evident in his voice. Food, at least, was safe territory. I brought a plate of cookies and a pitcher of lemonade, setting them on the coffee table. For a few minutes, we engaged in the most stilted small talk imaginable. Comments about the weather, Lily's upcoming science exam, Marcus's dorm roommate. No one mentioned my birthday, or Robert and Catherine, or the reason they were really here. Finally, Sophie cleared her throat. "Nana, Mom told us about the money you've been saving for us." She glanced at her siblings before continuing. "And about how you're reallocating some of it." "Yes," I said simply, not rushing to fill the uncomfortable silence that followed. "Mom said it's because we missed your birthday dinner," Lily blurted out, her young face creased with worry. "We're really sorry, Nana. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "It's not just about the birthday dinner," I said gently, though that was certainly part of it. "It's about what that evening represented. A pattern where I've become an afterthought in your lives." "That's not true," Marcus protested. "We love you, Nana." "I know you do," I assured him. "But love can take many forms. Sometimes it's thoughtful and attentive. Other times it's convenient." Sophie flinched at the word. "We've been busy with school and activities. It's not that we don't care." "I understand busy," I said. "I worked full-time as a nurse while raising your mother alone. I know what busy looks like. But we make time for the people and things that matter most to us." The room fell silent again, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. "Mom also told us about Grandpa and Catherine," Marcus said finally. "About how we didn't tell you they moved back right away. And about how you saw the Facebook pictures from their welcome dinner," Lily added, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Yes," I said. "I saw them." "We should have told you," Sophie admitted. "It's just that Grandpa made it sound like you and he had this huge, dramatic history that we shouldn't bring up. And then Catherine was so excited to see us, and she had all these cool stories about her travels, and it just seemed easier to keep everything separate." "Do you know why your grandfather and I divorced?" I asked, watching their faces carefully. They exchanged glances. Mom said it was because you grew apart, Marcus offered. That sometimes people change and marriage doesn't work anymore. I nodded slowly. That's partially true. We did grow apart. But the reason we grew apart is that your grandfather was having an affair with Catherine for the last 5 years of our marriage. 3 pairs of eyes widened in shock. With Grandma. Kate? Lily whispered. The name felt like a slap. Yes, I said evenly. With Catherine. She was his administrative assistant at the time. But they've been together forever, Sophie protested. They're like actual grandparents. They're married. They got married 2 years after our divorce, I confirmed. But their relationship began long before that. While I was working night shifts to help pay for your mother's college education, your grandfather was building a life with someone else. Why? Didn't anyone tell us? Marcus demanded, looking angry. I didn't think it was appropriate to burden you with adult problems, I said. And I suspect your mother and grandfather had their own reasons for the simplified version you received. So all this time, when we've been spending time with them, calling her Grandma Kate. Sophie trailed off, the implications sinking in. It's been painful for me, I acknowledged. Not because you have a relationship with them, that's natural. And even healthy. But because it seemed to come at the expense of your relationship with me. And because no one was honest about it. We didn't know, Lily said, tears welling in her eyes. I swear, Nana, if I had known it would hurt you, I never would have called her that. I reached over and took her hand. I believe you, sweetheart. This isn't about placing blame. It's about understanding why things have reached this point. And the money? Marcus asked. Mom said you're keeping some of it for yourself now? I nodded. About 20%. The rest will still go to all of you, but in a more structured way. What are you going to do with it? Sophie asked, curiosity, replacing some of the tension in her voice. I'm going to travel, I said, allowing my excitement to show. I've applied for a passport. I'm planning a trip to Paris and then perhaps Italy and Greece. I'm going to renovate my kitchen with the granite countertops I've always wanted. I'm going to buy a new car to replace the one that breaks down every other month. I'm going to live, not just exist. By yourself? Lily looked concerned. Isn't that dangerous? I smiled. No more dangerous than remaining stagnant because I'm afraid to step out of my comfort zone. But what about us? Marcus asked. Mom said we were counting on that money for college and stuff. And you'll still receive it, for legitimate educational expenses. The rest will come to you in stages as you grow older and hopefully wiser about financial matters. Sophie leaned forward. So instead of getting it all now, we have to wait until we're what, 30? For the bulk of it, yes, I confirmed. Though, your education will be funded immediately as needed. That's not fair, she protested. I have student loans now. I was going to use that money to pay them off and maybe buy a condo. The loans will be paid, I assured her. But the condo might have to wait until you've saved a bit more yourself. This feels like punishment, she said, crossing her arms. For one missed birthday dinner. It's not punishment, I said firmly. It's a recognition that I've spent 40 years putting everyone else's needs before my own. That stops now. I'm 70 years old, Sophie. How many good years do I have left? 5? 10 if I'm lucky? Don't I deserve to enjoy some of the money I've worked so hard to save? She didn't answer, but her expression softened slightly. Let me ask you something, I continued. If the situations were reversed, if you had spent decades saving for someone else's future while denying yourself even small pleasures, would you consider it fair? The question hung in the air, unanswerable in its simple truth. I guess not, Marcus finally admitted. When you put it that way. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, I said. I chose to save that money because I wanted to give you all a solid foundation. I still want that, but I also need to build a foundation for myself now, while I still can. So you're definitely going to Paris? Lily asked, a note of wonder creeping into her voice. Yes, I smiled. As soon as my passport arrives. That's actually pretty cool, Nana, she said. No one else's grandmother goes to Paris by themselves. Thank you, Lily, I said, touched by her shift in perspective. Can we see pictures of the places you're going to visit? Marcus asked, his natural curiosity emerging. Of course. I retrieved my laptop and pulled up the research I'd been doing, images of the Eiffel Tower at night, the Louvre, sidewalk cafes along the Champs-Élysées. As we scrolled through the pictures together, the atmosphere in the room gradually lightened. The grandchildren asked questions about my travel plans, expressed preferences for certain sites, even suggested activities they thought I might enjoy. You know, Sophie said thoughtfully, I studied abroad in Rome last year. I could give you some tips about traveling in Europe. Things to pack, phrases to know, that sort of thing. I'd appreciate that, I said sincerely. And I could help you set up Instagram, Lily offered, so you can post pictures of your trip and we can all see them. Maybe we could FaceTime while you're there, Marcus suggested, like a virtual tour of Paris. Their enthusiasm was genuine, and for the first time in our conversation, I felt like they were seeing me, not as a passive grandmother figure whose only purpose was to provide for them, but as a person with dreams and agency. As the afternoon progressed, we finished the cookies and lemonade. The conversation flowed more naturally, touching on their lives, my plans, and even some tentative discussions about how we might rebuild our relationship moving forward. When it was time for them to leave, each embraced me at the door. Lily's hug was fierce and tearful. Marcus's was quick but sincere. Sophie's lingered and she whispered, I'm sorry, Nana, for everything. After they left, I sat on my porch swing, processing the afternoon. It had gone better than I'd feared, though not as well as I'd hoped. The truth about Robert and Catherine had clearly shocked them, and the changes to their inheritance had disappointed them, Sophie especially. But they had also shown glimmers of understanding, moments of genuine connection that gave me hope. My phone chimed with a text message from Lily. Found this website for senior travel groups in Paris. Thought you might like it. A link followed. A small olive branch, perhaps, but a meaningful one. I clicked the link and began to read, a smile spreading across my face. The future, my future, was beginning to take shape. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. My passport application was processing expedited, and I'd booked an appointment with a travel doctor to ensure I had all necessary vaccinations. Patricia, my financial advisor, had helped me establish a separate travel fund with a dedicated credit card that wouldn't incur foreign transaction fees. I'd even purchased a new suitcase, sleek, lightweight, with spinner wheels that would make navigating airports and train stations easier. Each step was small, but together they formed a path leading me away from the person I had been and toward the person I wanted to become. The conversations with Olivia and the grandchildren had shifted something between us, though I wasn't yet sure if the change was positive. Olivia called more frequently, but her voice carried a careful formality that hadn't been there before. The grandchildren sent occasional texts, Marcus asking about my passport status, Lily sharing links to Paris travel blogs, Sophie offering brief updates about her job search after graduation. Their efforts felt tentative, like explorers testing thin ice. And perhaps that was appropriate. We were all navigating unfamiliar territory. One Tuesday morning, as I was researching Parisian hotels, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Nancy Delgado, my former nursing colleague, standing on the porch holding a gift bag. "Nancy!" I exclaimed, genuinely pleased. "What brings you here?" "I heard a rumor that Eleanor Winters is going to Paris," she said with a grin, stepping inside. "And I couldn't let you go without a proper send-off. I haven't even booked the tickets yet?" I laughed, leading her to the living room. "But you will," she said confidently, settling onto the sofa. Now open your gift. Inside the bag, I found a beautiful leather-bound travel journal, a pen that claimed to write upside down and underwater, and a small zippered pouch containing euro coins. The journal is for all your adventures, Nancy explained. The pen is because you never know when inspiration will strike. And the euros are just to get you started. I had them left over from my trip to Spain last year. I was touched by her thoughtfulness. Nancy, this is wonderful. Thank you. She waved away my gratitude. It's nothing. I'm just excited for you. She leaned forward, eyes sparkling. So, tell me everything. When are you going? Where are you staying? Have you booked tours? For the next hour, I shared my research and tentative plans while Nancy listened attentively, occasionally offering suggestions based on her own travels. Her enthusiasm was infectious, her support unwavering. You know, she said as our conversation wound down, not everyone would have the courage to do what you're doing. Travel to Paris? I asked, puzzled. Thousands of people do it every day. Not just the travel, she clarified. Standing up for yourself, setting boundaries with your family, choosing your own happiness after a lifetime of putting others first. That takes real courage, Eleanor. I hadn't thought of it that way. To me, it had felt less like courage and more like necessity. A desperate gasping for air after decades of slowly drowning. I'm not sure I had a choice, I admitted. After the birthday dinner, something just broke inside me. Or maybe it finally came together. I'm not sure which. Nancy nodded, understanding. Sometimes we need a catalyst, something that forces us to see clearly what we've been avoiding or denying. I just hope I'm not making a terrible mistake, I confessed, giving voice to the doubt that had been shadowing my newfound resolve. What if I get to Paris and hate it? What if I'm too old for adventure? What if the grandchildren never forgive me for changing the inheritance plan? What if you get to Paris and love it? What if you discover you're exactly the right age for adventure? What if the grandchildren learn valuable lessons about money and relationships? Nancy countered. You can play the what-if game forever, Eleanor, but at some point, you have to stop wondering and start living. After Nancy left, her words stayed with me. Stop wondering and start living. That afternoon, I took another small step forward. I booked my flight to Paris for June 15th, 6 weeks away. Then I called Golden Age Travel Agency and arranged a consultation for the following day to discuss accommodations and guided tours. As I hung up the phone, it chimed with an incoming text from Olivia. Mom, we're having a family dinner this Sunday at our house. 5 p.m. Everyone will be there. Please come. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. The last family dinner I'd attended had been Robert and Catherine's welcome home celebration, a dinner I hadn't even known about until after the fact. Was this another attempt to force reconciliation? Or a genuine effort to repair our fractured relationships? Before I could decide, my phone rang. It was Doris Miller, my oldest friend, calling from Florida where she had retired 5 years earlier. Eleanor Winters, she said the moment I answered. Is it true you're going to Paris? I laughed. How on earth did you hear about that? I just booked the ticket an hour ago. Nancy Delgado called Martha Jenkins, who called her daughter Susan, who ran into my sister at the pharmacy, Doris explained, as if this chain of communication was perfectly normal. Is it true? Yes, I confirmed. I leave June 15th. Well, glory hallelujah, Doris exclaimed. It's about time you did something for yourself, Eleanor. I've been telling you for years to travel while you still have good knees. I know. I chuckled. You were right all along. Of course I was right. I'm always right. Now tell me everything. As I shared my plans with Doris, I found myself growing more excited and less anxious. Hearing myself describe the trip out loud, the sights I wanted to see, the foods I wanted to try, the experiences I hoped to have, made it feel more real, more attainable. What about your family? Doris asked eventually. How are they taking all this? I hesitated, then told her everything. The missed birthday dinner, the revelation about Robert and Catherine, the confrontations with Olivia and the grandchildren, the changes to the inheritance. Good for you, Doris said firmly when I finished. It's high time they learned you're not just a walking checkbook and babysitting service. I don't want to punish them, I clarified. I just want to be seen as a person with my own needs and desires. Honey, sometimes those two things look mighty similar, Doris said with the wisdom of her 75 years. But I understand what you're saying, and I think what you're doing is absolutely right. After we hung up, I returned to Olivia's text invitation. A family dinner. Everyone will be there. The phrasing was ambiguous. Did everyone include Robert and Catherine, or just Olivia, James, and the grandchildren? Before I could overthink it, I typed a response. Who exactly will be attending this dinner? Olivia's reply came quickly. Just us, me, James, the kids, no one else. No Robert and Catherine then. That was a relief. But I was still wary of Olivia's motives. Was this a genuine olive branch, or another attempt to make me feel guilty about my decisions? May I ask what the occasion is? I texted back. Her response took longer this time. No special occasion. We just want to spend time with you, before your trip, if you still want to see us. The last sentence struck a chord. If you still want to see us. As if I was the one who had been absent, who had forgotten birthdays and chosen other people over family. But perhaps that wasn't fair. Perhaps Olivia was genuinely trying, in her own way, to bridge the gap that had opened between us. I took a deep breath and texted back. I'll be there. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, came the immediate reply. We're taking care of everything. The rest of the week passed in a whirlwind of travel preparations. My consultation at Golden Age Travel Agency was productive. I booked a charming hotel in the Saint-Germain-des-Prés neighborhood, arranged for airport transfers, and signed up for a small group guided tour of the Louvre. The agent, a woman about my age named Helen, had traveled extensively throughout Europe and offered invaluable advice about everything from packing light to avoiding tourist traps. You're going to love Paris, she assured me as I signed the final paperwork. It's a city that rewards curiosity and openness, especially in someone with your life experience. What do you mean? I asked. Young people see Paris through one lens: romance, excitement, fashion, Helen explained. But at our age, we see the history, the resilience, the beauty that comes from surviving centuries of change. We appreciate it differently, more deeply. Her words stayed with me as I drove home, a new perspective that made my upcoming adventure seem even more meaningful. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a pilgrimage of sorts, a journey not just to see new places, but to discover new aspects of myself. Sunday arrived with clear skies and gentle spring sunshine. I dressed with care for the family dinner, choosing a floral blouse I'd bought recently, a small indulgence that would have seemed frivolous to me just weeks earlier. I even took time with my makeup and styled my hair, efforts I had largely abandoned in recent years. As I prepared to leave, I caught my reflection in the hall mirror. Something had changed in my face. The features were the same: the soft wrinkles at the corners of my eyes, the silver threading through my brown hair, the slight softening beneath my chin that no amount of creams could firm. But there was a liveliness in my eyes, a lift to my shoulders that had been missing for longer than I cared to admit. For the first time in years, I looked like a woman with a future, not just a past. With that thought buoying my spirits, I drove to Olivia's house, ready to face whatever this family dinner might bring. Olivia's house sat on a tree-lined street in one of the newer developments across town, a sprawling 2-story with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. It was the kind of home I had never aspired to own myself, preferring my modest, paid-for bungalow with its manageable yard and cozy rooms. But Olivia had always wanted more more space, more luxury, more status. In that way, she took after Robert. I parked my aging sedan behind Marcus's used Corolla and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. Family dinners had once been a source of joy for me, a time to connect, to share, to nurture. When had they become something to dread? Before I could dwell on that thought, the front door opened. Lily bounded down the walkway, her long legs eating up the distance with the boundless energy of youth. "Nana!" she called, reaching the car just as I stepped out. "You're here!" Her enthusiasm seemed genuine as she wrapped me in a hug. "I was watching for you through the window," she admitted as she released me. "Mom's been stressed all day about this dinner. She changed clothes 3 times? Has she?" I was surprised by this glimpse of Olivia's uncertainty. Lily nodded solemnly. "She wants everything to be perfect. She even made that carrot cake you like, from scratch, not from a box, and she never bakes from scratch." The revelation touched me. Whatever else happened this evening, this small effort meant something. As we approached the house, the rest of the family appeared at the door. Olivia, looking elegant but slightly anxious in a blue dress I'd never seen before. James, tall and distinguished with new strands of gray at his temples. Sophie, her posture stiff, but her smile making an effort. And Marcus, his natural ebullience only slightly dimmed by the tension in the air. "Mom," Olivia stepped forward, her voice carefully modulated. "I'm so glad you could come." "Thank you for inviting me," I replied, equally careful. James moved in for a hug, warm but brief. "Good to see you, Eleanor. It's been too long." "Look at you," Sophie exclaimed, her eyes widening slightly as she took in my appearance. "You look different, Nana." "Good different or bad different?" I asked, half joking. "Good," she said decisively. "Really good. I like your blouse." Inside, the house sparkled with cleanliness. The dining room table was set with Olivia's best china, the yacht set Robert and I had given them as a wedding gift, I noted with a pang. "Can I get you something to drink?" James offered. "Wine? Iced tea?" "Iced tea would be lovely," I said, settling into an armchair. The conversation started tentatively, with safe topics like the unseasonably warm weather and Lily's upcoming school dance. Gradually, as James distributed drinks and Olivia brought out appetizers, homemade spinach dip with fresh vegetables, another small effort that didn't go unnoticed, the atmosphere warmed slightly. "So," Marcus said, reaching for a carrot stick, "Mom says you're really going to Paris, Nana. Like, for real?" "For real," I confirmed, unable to suppress a smile. "My passport should arrive next week, and I've already booked my flight and hotel." "That's so cool," Lily said, her eyes wide with admiration. "How long will you be gone?" 2 weeks. I fly out June 15th and return on the 29th. "Are you going alone?" Sophie asked, her tone suggesting she found the idea concerning. "Yes," I said firmly. "Though I've arranged for some guided tours and day trips with small groups. The travel agent I'm working with specializes in solo travelers my age." "Is that safe?" Olivia asked, echoing her daughter's concern. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Paris is one of the safest major cities in the world, especially for tourists. And I'm not exactly helpless, Olivia. I navigated the Chicago subway system by myself when I attended that nursing conference in '85. "That was 40 years ago, Mom," she pointed out. "And I've gained 4 decades of wisdom since then," I countered. "Plus smartphones and Google Maps." James chuckled. "She's got you there, Liv." Olivia's mouth tightened slightly, but she didn't argue further. "What are you most excited to see in Paris, Nana?" Marcus asked, deftly changing the subject. I considered the question seriously. "The Musée d'Orsay, I think. I've always loved Impressionist art, Monet, Renoir, Degas, and the building itself is fascinating. A converted railway station with this magnificent clock. Though I'm also looking forward to simply wandering the neighborhoods, finding little cafes, watching Parisian life unfold. That sounds amazing, Lily sighed dreamily. I want to travel like that someday. You will, I assured her. When you're ready, when you've earned it. The subtle emphasis on earned wasn't lost on anyone. A brief, uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Dinner's ready, Olivia announced, rising quickly. Everyone to the table, please. We moved to the dining room, where a veritable feast awaited. Roast chicken with rosemary and lemon, scalloped, potatoes, green beans, almondine, fresh rolls. All my favorites, prepared with obvious care. This looks wonderful, Olivia, I said sincerely as we took our seats. I wanted to make all the things you like, she replied, a vulnerability in her voice I rarely heard. As James carved the chicken and plates were passed, I took the opportunity to really look at my family. Olivia, whose perfectionistic tendencies had always masked a deep fear of failure. James, solid and dependable but often too willing to avoid conflict. Sophie, ambitious and headstrong like her mother. Marcus, sensitive and perceptive beneath his easygoing exterior. Lily, still finding her way but watching everything, absorbing the family dynamics even as she participated in them. I loved them all so dearly, even now, even after the hurt. That realization struck me with surprising force. The problem had never been a lack of love, but rather what that love had cost me, and what it had taught them about my value in the family. Mom, Olivia said once everyone was served, before we eat, we have something for you. She nodded to Sophie, who rose and disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a large gift bag. This is from all of us, Olivia explained, as Sophie placed the bag beside my plate. A small token for your trip. I opened the bag with curious fingers. Inside was a beautiful leather travel tote with my initials embossed in the corner, a travel pillow, a universal power adapter, and a slim book titled Walking Tours of Paris. We wanted you to have everything you might need, Olivia said, watching my face anxiously. Sophie researched the best travel accessories and Marcus found the walking tour book. The tote is waterproof and has RFID blocking technology to protect. Your credit cards. And I picked the color, Lily added, because blue is your favorite. I was genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, not just the items themselves, but the fact that each family member had contributed something meaningful. This is wonderful, I said, running my hand over the soft leather of the tote. Thank you all so much. There's one more thing, James said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small box. This is something a bit more practical. Inside, the box was a smartphone, newer and sleeker than my aging flip phone. It's international, James explained. We've already set it up with all our numbers, plus apps for translation, maps, currency conversion, and emergency assistance. The plan includes data and texting while you're in France, so you can stay in touch and share photos. We thought maybe we could FaceTime sometimes, Marcus added hopefully. So we can see Paris too, through your eyes. I stared at the phone, conflicted. On one hand, the gift was incredibly thoughtful and useful. On the other, it felt slightly controlling. A way to keep tabs on me, to make sure I wasn't straying too far from their oversight. That's very generous, I said finally, choosing my words with care. And it will certainly be helpful to have a better phone for the trip. You don't seem thrilled, Sophie observed, ever direct. I looked at her, then at each family member in turn. I appreciate the gift very much, but I wonder if it comes with expectations I'm not prepared to meet. I'm going to Paris to experience something new, something that's just for me. I won't be checking in constantly or sending daily updates. We wouldn't expect that, Olivia said quickly. Too quickly. Wouldn't you? I asked gently. Isn't that partly why you chose this particular gift? So you could be sure I was safe, so you could reach me whenever you wanted? Olivia flushed. Is that so wrong? To want to know you're okay? No, I acknowledged. It's not wrong. But it is a continuation of old patterns. You see me as someone who needs protecting, monitoring. I see myself as someone embarking on an adventure that's mine alone. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Look, I continued, softening my tone. I truly do appreciate the phone, and I promise I'll check in regularly and share highlights from my trip. But I need you all to understand that this journey is part of a bigger change in my life. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of my role as mother and grandmother. That means I need space and trust and the freedom to explore without feeling like I have to justify every decision or report every movement. James was the first to nod. That's fair, Eleanor. The phone is a gift, not a monitoring device. Use it however works best for you. It's just that we're not used to thinking of you as adventurous, Olivia admitted. You've always been so reliable, so present. This feels like a sudden change. It's not sudden to me, I said. It's been building for years, decades, really. I just didn't have the courage to acknowledge it until recently. Because of the birthday dinner, Sophie stated flatly. That was the catalyst, I agreed. But the feelings were there long before that. I just kept pushing them aside, telling myself that your needs mattered more than mine. That's not healthy, for any of us. But we didn't ask you to do that, Marcus protested. No, you didn't, I acknowledged. That was my choice. But choices have consequences, even well-intentioned ones. My choice to always put everyone else first taught you all that. I would always be available, always accommodating, always willing to sacrifice. It became the expectation rather than the exception. The family exchanged glances, absorbing my words with varying degrees of acceptance and discomfort. Are you really going to spend $200,000 on yourself? Lily asked suddenly, cutting through, the tension with the directness only a teenager could muster. Lily! Olivia scolded. It's all right, I said, turning to my youngest grandchild. Yes, Lily, I am going to use some of the money I saved for travel and home improvements. But it's important to understand that this isn't money I've suddenly decided to spend frivolously. It's money I earned over 40 years of hard work. Money I saved by denying myself many comforts and pleasures that others my age took for granted. Like what? She asked, genuinely curious. Like a car that doesn't break down every few months? Like kitchen appliances from this century? Like travel, not just to Paris, but even weekend trips to neighboring states? I haven't bought new furniture since before you were born. My winter coat is 15 years old. I've never had a professional manicure or visited a spa. The specificity of these examples seemed to land with the family in a way my broader statements hadn't. They looked around at each other, perhaps seeing for the first time the contrast between their comfortable lifestyle and the austerity I had chosen in order to provide for their future. I had no idea, Sophie murmured, looking slightly ashamed. Of course you didn't, I said gently. You weren't supposed to. I wanted you all to have opportunities I didn't have without worrying about the cost. And I don't regret that choice. I just need to balance it now while I still can. James raised his glass. To balance, then, and to new adventures. The rest of the family joined the toast, and the tension in the room eased slightly as we turned our attention to the meal. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: Lily's upcoming science fair project, Marcus's summer internship prospects, Sophie's job interviews in the city. As we finished the main course and Olivia brought out the carrot cake, I noticed a subtle change in the family dynamic. They were making more effort to include me in the conversation, asking my opinion on topics beyond grandmotherly advice, sharing stories and jokes that didn't center around family obligations or past events. It was a small shift, but a meaningful one. They were beginning to see me differently, not just as Nana Ellie, the reliable matriarch whose only purpose was to support them, but as Eleanor, a woman with her own passions, opinions, and future. When the evening finally wound down and I prepared to leave, each family member embraced me with what felt like genuine warmth. I'm sorry, Olivia whispered as she hugged me at the door. For everything. I'm trying to understand. I know, I whispered back. So am I. As I drove home under a canopy of stars, I realized that tonight, for perhaps the first time in years, I had felt both loved as a mother and grandmother and respected as an individual. The two weren't mutually exclusive after all. It wasn't perfect. There were still wounds to heal, patterns to break, boundaries to establish. But it was a start. A genuine step forward on this new path I was forging, not just to Paris, but to a life reclaimed. The days following the family dinner brought a tentative new rhythm to my interactions with Olivia and the grandchildren. The texts and calls continued, but with a different tone, less obligation, more genuine interest. Lily sent me links to virtual tours of Parisian landmarks. Marcus helped me set up the new smartphone, patiently explaining features I hadn't known existed. Sophie surprised me with a visit one afternoon, bringing coffee and offering to help me shop for travel clothes. I've been thinking about what you said, she admitted as we sat on my porch swing, about sacrificing all those years. It never occurred to me that you were going without things you wanted or needed. It wasn't a hardship, really, I assured her. I chose it. Still, she persisted, I feel like I took advantage of your generosity without ever considering what it cost you. Her self-awareness touched me. Sophie had always been the most like Olivia, pragmatic, focused, sometimes blindly ambitious. This reflectiveness was new. We're all learning, I said. Me included. Small steps, subtle shifts. A family slowly, finding its way back to each other, but with new boundaries, new understanding. May turned to June. My passport arrived, a small blue booklet empty of stamps but full of possibility. The formal paperwork for the changes to the inheritance fund was completed, with Patricia handling the technical details. My kitchen renovation was scheduled to begin while I was in Paris, with Nancy agreeing to oversee the contractors in my absence. Life was moving forward, gaining momentum towards something new and hopeful. Then, one Wednesday morning in early June, just 10 days before my departure for Paris, I had an encounter that threatened to shake my newfound confidence. I was in Thornton's department store, browsing the travel section for lightweight, wrinkle-resistant clothing, when a familiar voice called my name. Eleanor? Eleanor Winters, is that you? I turned to find Catherine Weber, now Catherine Smith, standing a few feet away, elegant in a cream linen suit, her silver blonde hair swept into a chic updo. Even at 65, she was striking, with the kind of confident beauty that comes from a lifetime of being admired. Catherine, I acknowledged, my voice cooler than the store's air conditioning. We hadn't spoken directly in 20 years. I thought that was you, she said, stepping closer with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Robert said you still lived in town, but our paths haven't crossed until now. Imagine that, I said, turning back to the clothing rack, hoping she would take the hint. She didn't. I understand congratulations are in order, she continued. Olivia mentioned you're planning a trip to Paris. How exciting for you. The fact that Olivia had been discussing my plans with Catherine sent a wave of irritation through me. Of course they talked. They were family now, in a way that excluded me. Yes, I replied shortly. I leave next week. Paris is magical, Catherine said with a sigh. Robert and I try to go every few years. In fact, we just returned from a month. In Europe in April, Paris, Rome, the Greek Isles. That's why we missed your birthday gathering. We were still in Santorini. I stared at her, momentarily confused. My birthday gathering? Yes, the dinner Olivia had planned for your 70th. She was so disappointed when the children chose to come to our welcome home dinner instead. But you know how kids are. They get excited about one thing and forget about another. Realization dawned slowly, then crashed over me like a wave. There had been a planned birthday dinner. The children hadn't simply forgotten. They had chosen deliberately to attend Catherine and Robert's welcome home dinner instead. "I see," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. Catherine's smile turned sympathetic, though her eyes remained calculating. "Oh dear, did you not know? I assumed Olivia had explained everything. How awkward." I recognized the tactic for what it was, a deliberate attempt to hurt me, to assert her position in the family hierarchy. 20 years ago, it would have devastated me. Today, it merely clarified things I had already suspected. "Not awkward at all," I said, summoning a genuine smile. "It's actually helpful to understand exactly what happened. Thank you for clearing that up." Catherine seemed taken aback by my calm response. She had expected tears, perhaps, or angry denials. "Well," she recovered quickly. "Water under the bridge now, I suppose. I must say, Paris is an interesting choice for a solo traveler your age. Robert and I find that guided tours are so much more appropriate for seniors. All those stairs and hills in Paris can be quite challenging." "I'm in excellent health," I informed her. "My doctor says I have the stamina of someone 20 years younger." "How fortunate," she murmured. "Still, wouldn't you be more comfortable with a companion? Perhaps one of the grandchildren could join you. Sophie spent a semester in Rome, you know. She's quite the experienced traveler." "I'm aware of Sophie's study abroad experience," I said. "But this trip is just for me. A personal adventure." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. "How independent of you. Though I must say the grandchildren were rather shocked to learn you've repurposed their inheritance money for this adventure." Lily was in tears when she told us about it. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. Catherine was trying to position herself as the grandmother the children confided in, trusted, ran to with their troubles caused by me and my selfish decisions. "How interesting," I said, selecting a navy travel dress from the rack and holding it up for inspection. "Because Lily helped me research Paris walking tours just yesterday. She seemed quite excited about my trip." Catherine's smile faltered slightly. "Well, children are resilient, aren't they? And speaking of the grandchildren, we're hosting Sophie's graduation party next weekend at our house. I do hope you'll come. The whole family will be there, and it would mean so much to Sophie." This was news to me. Sophie's graduation had been 2 weeks ago, a small family celebration at Olivia's house that I had attended. There had been no mention of another party. "How thoughtful of you to host," I said neutrally. "It's the least we can do," Catherine said with a practiced air of modesty. "Our home is so much more suited to entertaining than Olivia's. And Robert wanted to do something special for his first grandchild's graduation. He's ordered a case of champagne from France, and we're having the event catered by Marcel's. You know that French bistro downtown?" Each detail was carefully calibrated to emphasize what Catherine and Robert could provide that I couldn't. Luxury, extravagance, connections. The expensive champagne, the high-end catering, the spacious home. 20 years ago, I would have felt diminished by these comparisons. Today, I saw them for what they were. The desperate tactics of a woman who had stolen a husband, but never quite managed to steal the moral high ground. "It sounds lovely," I said, gathering the clothes I had selected. "I'm sure Sophie will appreciate the gesture. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to try these on before my lunch appointment." I didn't have a lunch appointment, but Catherine didn't need to know that. "Of course," she said, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from her linen jacket. "It was so nice catching up, Eleanor. I do hope your little trip goes well." "I'm sure it will," I replied. "Enjoy the graduation party." As I walked toward the fitting rooms, I heard Catherine call after me, "I'll tell Olivia and the children you send your love." I didn't turn around. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. In the privacy of the fitting room, I leaned against the wall and took several deep breaths. The encounter had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Not because of Catherine's transparent attempts to hurt me, but because of what she had revealed about my birthday. Olivia had planned a dinner. The children had known about it. And they had chosen, consciously and deliberately, to go to Robert and Catherine's instead. The realization should have hurt. In some ways it did. But it also validated the changes I had made since that night. If I had continued as before, giving everything, asking for nothing, ignoring the imbalance in our relationships, nothing would have changed. I would have remained the convenient grandmother, valued for what I provided but not for who I was. As I tried on the travel clothes I had selected, I studied my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was changing, inside and out. There was a confidence in her posture that hadn't been there before, a clarity in her gaze that spoke of difficult truths, faced and absorbed. I purchased the clothes without guilt: a travel dress, 2 pairs of lightweight pants, 3 wrinkle-resistant tops, a cardigan for cool evenings, a packable rain jacket, a small fortune by my old standards, a reasonable investment by my new ones. As I left the store, my phone chimed with a text from Olivia. "Mom, are you free for coffee tomorrow? Just us. There's something I need to tell you." I stared at the message, wondering if Catherine had already reached out to her, if tomorrow's conversation would be about the graduation party I hadn't been invited to, or some other revelation designed to test my newfound resolve. Whatever it was, I would face it as the woman I was becoming, not the woman I had been. "Yes," I texted back. "My place at 10? I'll make scones." Then I drove home, parked my aging car in the driveway, and spent the afternoon planning which books to pack for my trip to Paris. Guidebooks, certainly, but also a novel set in the city, a collection of Hemingway's essays about his time there, and a blank journal Nancy had given me for recording my experiences. Catherine's attempts to diminish my excitement about Paris had failed. If anything, her condescension had only strengthened my determination to have a meaningful, independent adventure, one that couldn't be overshadowed by expensive champagne or catered parties. I had spent my life in the shadow of other people's priorities. Now, at 70, I was finally stepping into the light of my own. The next morning, I was up early baking cranberry orange scones, my mother's recipe, perfected over decades of Saturday mornings. The familiar ritual of measuring, mixing, and kneading was soothing, a counterpoint to the anxiety bubbling just beneath the surface. What did Olivia need to tell me? Had Catherine called her immediately after our encounter? Was this about Sophie's graduation party or something else entirely? By the time the doorbell rang at precisely 10 a.m., the house was filled with the comforting aroma of freshly baked goods and French roast coffee. "Mom." Olivia greeted me with a quick hug. She looked tired, shadows beneath her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. "Something smells wonderful." "Cranberry orange scones," I said, leading her to the kitchen. "Still your favorite, I hope." "Always," she managed a smile. We settled at the kitchen table, steaming mugs of coffee and warm scones between us. For a few minutes, we engaged in careful small talk: the unseasonably warm weather, James's recent promotion, Lily's last days of sophomore year. Finally, Olivia set down her coffee mug with a deliberate motion. "Mom, I ran into Catherine yesterday at the grocery store. She mentioned she saw you at Thornton's." "Yes," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We had an interesting conversation." Olivia winced slightly. "She said she might have let something slip about your birthday dinner. That you didn't know we had actually planned something?" "She did mention that, yes." "Mom, I can explain." I held up a hand, interrupting her. "Before you do, I'd like to know one thing. Was it true? Had you planned a birthday dinner that the children chose not to attend in favor of Robert and Catherine's welcome home celebration?" Olivia's gaze dropped to her coffee cup. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "But it wasn't like Catherine made it sound. We had talked about having a dinner here for your birthday. Nothing formal, just family. But then Dad and Catherine moved back that same week, and they were eager to reconnect with everyone. So you chose their dinner over mine," I finished. "For her?" We didn't think it was a big deal, she said, a defensive note creeping into her voice. We figured we'd just celebrate your birthday the following weekend. It wasn't like you had planned anything special. The casual dismissal stung more than I expected. Didn't I? I took 2 vacation days from the hospital to prepare. I cooked all your favorite foods. I set the table with my best china. Olivia looked genuinely surprised. You did? You never said anything about that. Why would I? When you texted that you had forgotten the dinner and were at Catherine's instead. What was I supposed to say? Actually, I spent 2 days cooking a feast that's now growing cold on my dining room table. I'm sorry, she said, and to her credit, she did look remorseful. I didn't know you had gone to all that trouble. That's just it, Olivia. You didn't. No, because you didn't ask. You assumed, as you always do, that your plans, your priorities were more important than mine. She flinched at the directness of my words. That's not fair, isn't it? Be honest with yourself. If not with me, when was the last time you considered my feelings before making a family decision? When was the last time you asked what I wanted instead of telling me what was going to happen? Olivia opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss. Catherine also mentioned Sophie's graduation party. I continued, my voice softening slightly. Next weekend at their house, catered by Marcel's, with imported champagne. Olivia's face flushed. I was going to tell you about that today. It was Dad's idea. He wanted to do something special for Sophie, and Catherine offered their house since it's bigger than ours. And no one thought to include me in the planning, or even to invite me until Catherine happened to mention it. Of course we were going. To invite you, Olivia protested. The invitations just went out yesterday. Yours is probably in the mail. I see, I said, not entirely convinced. And when exactly was this party planned? About 3 weeks ago, she admitted after a pause. So right around the time of our family dinner. The one where you gave me the travel gifts and we had that heart-to-heart conversation about my trip to Paris and the changes to the inheritance. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. Yes, I suppose so. And yet no one mentioned this party, despite the fact that it was already being planned. Despite the fact that it was for Sophie, my first grandchild, to celebrate her college graduation, a significant milestone. Mom, please. Olivia's voice took on a pleading quality. It wasn't a deliberate exclusion. It just happened that way. Dad took charge of it, and Catherine ran with the idea. By the time I realized you hadn't been consulted, everything was already arranged. I studied my daughter across the table, seeing the conflict in her expression. She was caught between 2 worlds, her mother's and her father's, and had been for most of her life. In many ways, she was still the little girl who had waited by the window for her father's car to appear, only to be disappointed again and again when he chose work, or Catherine, over family time. Olivia, I said gently, I understand that having your father back in your life is important to you. I understand that you want the children to have a relationship with him. I've never stood in the way of that. I know, she said quietly. But what I don't understand is why that has to come at the expense of your relationship with me. Why it has to involve secrets and half-truths and last-minute invitations. Why I'm treated as an afterthought in events involving my own grandchildren. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. It's complicated, Mom. Dad is persuasive, and Catherine is always so eager to host things, to be at the center of family events. They're both so confident about what they want. You've always been more flexible, more willing to adjust. And that flexibility has been taken for granted, I pointed out. For years, she nodded, a tear spilling down her cheek. Yes, I think maybe it has. We sat in silence for a moment, the truth of her admission hanging between us. I'm not asking you to choose between us, Olivia, I said finally. I would never put you in that position. But I am asking you to be honest with me and to think about how your actions and inactions affect me. I'm trying, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But I don't know how to balance everyone's expectations. Dad wants more time with the kids. Catherine wants to be the perfect grandmother. You want to be respected as more than just a grandmother. And I'm caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy. Perhaps that's the problem, I suggested. You're not responsible for everyone's happiness. You're only responsible for your own integrity and the way you treat others. The rest is up to them. She managed a watery smile. When did you get so wise, Mom? I've always been wise, I said with a small smile of my own. You just haven't been listening. Olivia laughed despite her tears, and the tension between us eased slightly. So, she said, reaching for another scone, will you come to Sophie's party? It would mean a lot to her. And to me. I considered the invitation. My instinct was to refuse, to protect myself from the inevitable comparisons, from Catherine's subtle barbs, from Robert's presence after so many years. But that would only punish Sophie, who was caught in the middle of adult complexities she hadn't created. Yes, I decided. I'll be there, but I'll be coming as Eleanor, a woman with her own identity and her own value. Not just as Nana Ellie, the reliable background character in everyone else's story. I understand, Olivia said, and for perhaps the first time I believed she truly did. As she prepared to leave an hour later, Olivia hesitated at the door. There's one more thing I should tell you, Mom, about the graduation party. My stomach tightened. What is it? Dad? She paused, clearly uncomfortable. Dad is planning to give Sophie a car, a new Audi convertible. It's already purchased, just waiting to be presented at the party. The extravagance of the gift was breathtaking. A new luxury car for a 22-year-old recent graduate who hadn't yet secured a full-time job. It was exactly the kind of grand gesture Robert had always favored. Impressive, public, and ultimately designed to create an obligation that could never quite be repaid. I see, I said, working to keep my voice steady. That's very generous of him. I wanted you to know beforehand, Olivia explained, so you wouldn't be surprised at the party, and so you'd understand why Sophie might seem overwhelmed by his gift. What she meant, of course, was that Sophie's reaction to her grandfather's lavish present might overshadow her appreciation for whatever more modest gift I might bring. She was trying, in her way, to protect my feelings. Thank you for telling me, I said sincerely. I appreciate the consideration. After Olivia left, I sat on my porch swing, processing our conversation. The revelations about my birthday dinner were painful, but not entirely surprising. The graduation, party dynamics were more complicated, a minefield of family politics, competing grandparents, and materialistic displays of affection. How would I navigate that event? What gift could I possibly bring that wouldn't seem pitiful in comparison to a luxury convertible? As I pondered these questions, my phone chimed with a text from Sophie. Nana, are you coming to the party next Saturday? It won't be the same without you. The simple message touched me. Whatever Sophie's reaction might be to Robert's extravagant gift, she still wanted my presence. That mattered. I'll be there, I texted back. Wild horses couldn't keep me away from celebrating your achievement. Her response came quickly. Great. Can you come early to help me get ready? Mom's going to be busy with the caterers and I could use your calm presence. Plus, I have some questions about Paris. Thinking maybe I might visit you there for a weekend if you're open to it? I stared at the message, warmth blooming in my chest. Sophie wanted my help, my presence, my advice. And she was considering joining me in Paris, not to monitor me or take over my trip, but to share in the experience, perhaps to see me in this new light, this new life I was creating. I would love that, I replied. Both helping you get ready and having you visit Paris. We can talk details when I see you. As I set the phone down, I realized something important. I didn't need to compete with Robert's extravagant gift. Sophie wasn't asking me for material things. She was asking for my time, my wisdom, my companionship. Those were gifts Robert, for all his wealth and grand gestures, had never consistently provided. The thought was freeing. I didn't need to measure my worth as a grandparent by the price tag of my gifts. I had something far more valuable to offer. A lifetime of love, shown not through flashy displays but through steady presence, through thousands of small moments of care and attention. With that realization, I knew exactly what to give Sophie for her graduation. Not something that would compete with Robert's Audi, but something that would complement the journey she was beginning. That afternoon, I drove to Harrison's Jewelry, a family-owned shop downtown that had been in business since before I was born. The bell above the door jingled softly as I entered, and Mr. Harrison himself greeted me from behind the counter. "Eleanor Winters," he smiled warmly. "I haven't seen you in ages. What brings you in today?" "I need a gift for my granddaughters. Graduation," I explained. "Something special, but not extravagant. Something meaningful." "I see." He nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me about your granddaughter." For the next half hour, I told him about Sophie. Her intelligence, her determination, her recent graduation, her upcoming job interviews. I told him about her study abroad experience in Rome, her interest in possibly visiting me in Paris, her love of travel and adventure that reminded me so much of dreams I had deferred until now. "I think I have just the thing," Mr. Harrison said when I finished. He disappeared into the back room and returned with a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate compass pendant on a silver chain, the face of the compass inlaid with mother of pearl, the cardinal points marked in tiny sapphires. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "It's more than decorative," he explained, carefully removing it from the box. "It's a working compass, small but accurate, and look here." He turned it over to show me the back, where there was space for a short engraving. "We could engrave a message," he suggested. "Something personal from you to your granddaughter." The pendant was perfect, elegant but practical, symbolic yet functional. Like me, I thought with a small smile. "I'll take it," I decided. "And for the engraving?" I thought for a moment, then wrote on a slip of paper the words I wanted inscribed on the back. The day of Sophie's graduation party dawned warm and sunny. I dressed with care in a new outfit I had purchased specifically for the occasion. A lightweight blue dress that matched my eyes, paired with comfortable but stylish sandals. I arrived at Robert and Catherine's house 45 minutes before the party was scheduled to begin, as Sophie had requested. The house was impressive, a sprawling Tudor-style home in an exclusive neighborhood, with manicured gardens and a circular driveway where a red Audi convertible sat gleaming in the sunlight, a giant bow on its hood. Robert's gift, displayed prominently for all to see. I took a deep breath, tucked Sophie's gift into my purse, and rang the doorbell. To my surprise, it was Robert who answered, and the shock of seeing him after so many years momentarily robbed me of speech. He had aged, of course. His hair was completely silver now, his face lined, his tall frame slightly stooped. But his eyes were the same deep blue that Olivia had inherited, the same eyes that now studied me with a mixture of wariness and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Eleanor," he said, his voice gruffer than I remembered. "You're early." "Sophie asked me to come help her get ready," I explained, finding my voice. "Ah." He stepped aside to let me enter. "She's upstairs, second door on the right." I nodded, moving past him into the foyer. The house was exactly as I would have expected. Expensively furnished, impeccably decorated, designed to impress rather than welcome. "Eleanor," he called as I reached the stairs. I turned back to face him. "You look well," he said awkwardly. "Very well, actually." "Thank you," I replied. So do you. It was a lie, but a polite one. Up close, Robert looked tired, strained. The confident man who had once broken my heart seemed dimmed somehow, less substantial than the monster my memory had created. Before either of us could say more, Catherine appeared from what I assumed was the kitchen, wearing an apron over a designer dress, her face lighting with a hostess's practiced smile. "Eleanor, you're early. We weren't expecting guests for another hour at least." Sophie asked her to come help her get ready, Robert explained. Catherine's smile faltered slightly. "Did she? How thoughtful. Well, you know where to find her. I need to get back to supervising the caterers." She disappeared as quickly as she had appeared, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. "I should go up," I said, gesturing to the stairs. Robert nodded. "Yes, of course." I found Sophie in a guest bedroom, surrounded by dresses laid out on the bed, her hair wrapped in a towel. Her expression one of mild panic. "Nana," she exclaimed when she saw me. "Thank goodness you're here. I can't decide what to wear, and my hair is being impossible, and I'm so nervous about all these people coming to celebrate me when I don't even have a job lined up yet." "Take a deep breath," I advised, closing the door behind me. "One thing at a time. Let's start with the dress." For the next half hour, I helped Sophie select an outfit. The emerald green dress that complemented her coloring, style her hair, loose waves that framed her face beautifully, and apply minimal makeup that enhanced her natural beauty. As we worked, she peppered me with questions about Paris, what I planned to see, where I would stay, what I hoped to experience. "I've been researching airfares," she admitted as I helped her with a necklace clasp. "There are some really cheap flights. If I'm flexible with dates, I could come for 3 or 4 days toward the end of your trip if that works for you." "I would love that," I said sincerely. "We could visit the museums together, have dinner at a sidewalk cafe, maybe take a boat tour on the Seine." "That sounds amazing," she smiled, "and a lot more meaningful than some graduation party where half the guests are Dad's business associates who barely know me." I raised an eyebrow. "Your grandfather invited his colleagues?" Sophie rolled her eyes. "Grandpa turns everything into a networking opportunity. But it's fine. The party will be over in a few hours, and then I can focus on more important things, like job applications and planning my Paris adventure." Her casual dismissal of Robert's elaborate party surprised me. I had assumed she would be thrilled by the extravagance, impressed by the expensive car waiting in the driveway. Instead, she seemed almost embarrassed by it all. "You don't seem very excited about your gift," I observed carefully. "The Audi is quite something," she sighed, turning to face me directly. "Can I be honest, Nana? It's too much. I appreciate the gesture. But a brand new luxury convertible for someone who just graduated? Who doesn't even have a steady income yet? It feels like, I don't know, like he's trying to buy my affection, or showing off how successful he is. Either way, it makes me uncomfortable." Her insight caught me off guard. When had Sophie become so perceptive, so grounded? "Plus," she continued, "the insurance and maintenance on a car like that are insane. I did the research when Mom let slip. What he was planning. I'd have to get a second job just to afford the upkeep." I couldn't help but laugh. "Sophie Hamilton, when did you become so practical?" She smiled sheepishly. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about earning things, about building a foundation. It made me realize I don't want to start my adult life dependent on extravagant gifts that come with strings attached, visible or not." Pride swelled in my chest, not because she was rejecting Robert's gift or aligning with my values instead of his, but because she was thinking for herself, considering the long-term implications of her choices rather than being dazzled by short-term pleasures. "You're going to be just fine," I told her, squeezing her hand. "Whatever path you choose." As guests began to arrive downstairs, I slipped away to the powder room for a moment of quiet reflection. The conversation with Sophie had touched me deeply. She was growing up, developing her own perspective on family dynamics and material wealth. And somehow, despite all the missteps and missed birthdays and competing influences, she had absorbed some of the values I had tried to model: thoughtfulness, independence, living within one's means. Maybe I hadn't failed as a grandmother after all. The party itself was exactly as I had expected. Lavish food, flowing champagne, a mix of family, members and strangers in expensive clothes making small talk around the expansive backyard. Catherine played the perfect hostess, greeting guests and directing servers with practiced ease. Robert held court near the pool, regaling a group of business associates with stories that featured him as the hero. Olivia and James circulated, making sure everyone had drinks and introducing Sophie to people she had never met. I found a quiet spot on the patio, content to observe rather than participate in the social performance. Marcus joined me after a while, a plate of hors d'oeuvres in hand. "This is weird, right?" he said, offering me a stuffed mushroom. "All these people pretending they care about Sophie's degree in environmental science when most of them probably work for companies that pollute for profit." I smiled at his astuteness. "It's a particular kind of social ritual," I agreed. "More about connections and impressions than actual celebration. Grandpa's friends keep asking me about my business plans after college," he continued, making air quotes. "When I tell them I'm studying music education, they change the subject really fast." "Not impressive enough for them?" I asked. "Not profitable enough," he corrected. "But I don't care. I'd rather teach kids to play clarinet than make a fortune, selling soulless luxury goods to people who don't need them." Another burst of pride warmed my chest. Marcus, too, was developing his own value system, one that prioritized meaning over material success. "Your grandfather wasn't always like this," I found myself saying. "When we were first married, he talked about making a difference, about public service being a calling. Somewhere along the way, that changed." Marcus considered this. "Do you think people just naturally get more materialistic as they get older? Is that what happens to everyone?" "No," I said firmly. "I think people become more of whatever they truly value. If they value status and luxury, they become more focused on acquiring those things. If they value connection and meaning, they seek more of that. Which explains why you're going to Paris by yourself at 70 instead of buying a fancy car or a bigger house," he observed. "You're becoming more of who you really are." The simplicity and accuracy of his assessment stunned me. "That's exactly it, Marcus. I couldn't have said it better myself." As the afternoon progressed, the moment for gift-giving arrived. Guests gathered around a table piled with presents, with the car keys prominently displayed in a large gift box at the center. Robert made a grand speech about his pride in his first grandchild, about the importance of starting adult life with the right advantages, about how Sophie deserved only the best. Then, with a flourish, he presented the keys to the Audi. Sophie accepted them with a gracious smile and appropriate expressions of surprise and gratitude. But I noticed she didn't rush to the driveway to examine her new car, didn't ask to take it for a spin, didn't even mention it again for the remainder of the gift-opening ceremony. When it came time for my gift, I approached with the small velvet box, suddenly self-conscious among the larger, more lavish presents. But Sophie's face lit up when she saw it was from me. "This is from your Nana Ellie," Olivia announced as Sophie accepted the box. Sophie opened it carefully, gasping softly when she saw the compass pendant. She lifted it from the velvet, examining it with genuine appreciation. "Nana, it's beautiful," she breathed. Then she turned it over and read the engraving I had chosen. "Find your true north." "Love," Nana, tears filled her eyes. Without hesitation, she removed the necklace she was wearing and asked me to help her put on the compass instead. As I fastened the clasp, she whispered, "This is the most perfect gift. Thank you." In that moment, standing amid the opulence of Robert and Catherine's backyard, surrounded by expensive gifts and catered luxury, I felt a victory sweeter than any I could have imagined. Not because my gift had outshone Robert's, it hadn't by any material measure, but because it had resonated with Sophie in a way his hadn't. Because she had recognized and valued the meaning behind it. Because perhaps for the first time, I had given not from obligation or tradition or duty, but from a genuine understanding of who Sophie was and who she was becoming. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, I prepared to leave as well. Catherine intercepted me at the door, her hostess smile firmly in place. "Leaving so soon, Eleanor? The caterers are just bringing out the dessert station." "I need to finish packing for Paris," I explained. "My flight is in 3 days." "Of course." She nodded. "Your little adventure. Well, I hope it lives up to your expectations." "I'm sure it will," I replied serenely. "Just as I'm sure Sophie will treasure her graduation memories." Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Yes. Robert's gift was quite something, wasn't it?" Sophie seemed pleased. "Sophie is gracious," I corrected gently, "and she values thoughtfulness over extravagance, something I've always admired about her." Before Catherine could respond, Sophie herself appeared, still wearing my compass pendant. "Nana, are you leaving? Let me walk you to your car." Outside, away from the party and the pretense, Sophie hugged me tightly. "Thank you for coming today. And for the compass. It means more to me than I can say." "I'm glad," I said, returning her embrace. "Remember, it's not just decorative, it actually works." "I know," she smiled. "I already tested it. North is that way." She pointed confidently. "And Paris is that way," I added, pointing east. "Just a short plane ride away." "I can't wait," she said. "I'll book my ticket this week if that's still okay." "More than okay," I assured her. "It would make my trip complete to share part of it with you." As I drove home, the afternoon's events replayed in my mind. The contrast between Robert's ostentatious display and Sophie's genuine appreciation for my simple gift. The evidence that both Sophie and Marcus were developing values that aligned more with quality of experience than quantity of possessions. The realization that my legacy wouldn't be measured in dollars or material goods, but in the values and perspectives I had helped to shape. 3 days later, I boarded a plane to Paris, my heart full of hope, and my mind open to whatever adventures awaited. In my carry-on bag was a leather-bound journal, a pen that could write upside down, a small pouch of euros from Nancy, and a new awareness that the most valuable gifts I had to give, and to receive, were not things at all, but experiences, wisdom and genuine connection. Paris awaited. And beyond that, a life reclaimed. Paris exceeded every expectation. From the moment I stepped out of Charles de Gaulle Airport into the waiting transfer car, a sense of possibility enveloped me, a feeling I hadn't experienced since I was young. Hotel in Saint-Germain-des-Prés was everything Helen at the travel agency had promised. Charming, centrally located, with a tiny balcony overlooking a bustling street lined with cafes and bookshops. The room was small by American standards, but perfectly appointed, with crisp linens, a modern bathroom, and windows that opened to let in the sounds and scents of Paris. Those first few days were a revelation. I wandered the streets with a map, in hand, discovering hidden courtyards, centuries-old churches, and tiny shops selling everything from handmade chocolates to antique books. I visited the Louvre with a small tour group, standing in awe before the Mona Lisa and the Winged Victory. I spent an entire afternoon in the Musée d'Orsay, moving slowly from one impressionist masterpiece to another, tears sometimes filling my eyes at the beauty captured on canvas. Each evening, I dined at a different cafe, ordering in my rudimentary French, delighting in the ritual of a leisurely meal accompanied by a glass of wine and followed by espresso. Sometimes I brought a book, but more often I simply watched the parade of humanity passing by. Couples strolling hand in hand, families herding excited children, groups of friends laughing over shared bottles of wine. I wasn't lonely, as Olivia had feared I would be. Instead, I was peacefully solitary, present with myself in a way I hadn't been for decades. Each night I wrote in the journal Nancy had given me, recording not just what I had seen and done, but how I felt. The emotions that surfaced as I navigated this new territory, both geographical and personal. I wrote about the unexpected lightness. I felt moving through the world as just Eleanor, without the weight of others' expectations. I wrote about the small triumphs of successfully ordering a meal, or finding my way back to the hotel using the metro. I wrote about the gradual uncurling of something long dormant inside me, curiosity, joy, a sense of adventure. I sent photos to the family, the Eiffel Tower sparkling at night, a perfect croissant at my favorite cafe, a street musician playing accordion beside the Seine. Their responses varied, enthusiastic emoji-filled texts. From Lily, thoughtful questions from Marcus, practical advice from Olivia about avoiding tourist scams. From Sophie, increasingly excited messages about her upcoming visit at the end of my second week. On day 10, I received an unexpected text. From Robert. Catherine showed me your Paris photos that Olivia shared. The city suits you. Always did, even in your mind. The message was cryptic, referencing conversations long forgotten, dreams once shared in the early days of our marriage. I didn't respond, but I found myself wondering if Robert, too, was reassessing the past, reconsidering choices made and paths not taken. As I prepared for Sophie's arrival, I realized that Paris had given me more than beautiful sights and delicious foods. It had given me perspective on my life, my relationships, my own worth. The Eleanor who had arrived in Paris was not the same Eleanor who would welcome Sophie at the airport. I was stronger now, more certain, more myself. And that was the greatest gift of all. Sophie arrived on a Thursday afternoon, her face flushed with excitement as she emerged from the arrivals gate at Charles de Gaulle. She spotted me immediately, waving enthusiastically and rushing over for a hug that nearly knocked me off my feet. "Nana, you look amazing," she exclaimed, stepping back to examine me. "There's something different about you." "It's Paris," I laughed. "It has a way of transforming people." We took the train into the city, Sophie chattering about her flight, her job interviews, and her first impressions of France. I had booked her a room at my hotel, just 2 doors down from mine. Close enough for convenience, but allowing us both privacy and independence. "I can't believe I'm actually here," she marveled as we settled into a cafe near our hotel that evening. "A month ago, I didn't even have a passport, and now I'm drinking wine in Paris with my grandmother who's having her own international adventure." "Life can change quickly when you let it," I observed, raising my glass to hers. The next 4 days were a beautiful blur of shared experiences. Sophie's energy and enthusiasm were contagious, pushing me to see and do more than I might have on my own. We climbed the steps to Sacré-Cœur for a breathtaking view of the city. We explored the narrow streets of Montmartre, stumbling upon artists painting en plein air. We spent a rainy afternoon in Shakespeare and Company, browsing books and sharing recommendations. What surprised me most was how easily we fell into rhythm together, not as grandmother and granddaughter in our traditional roles, but as 2 women exploring a magnificent city, sharing observations and insights, occasionally disagreeing but always with respect for each other's perspective. On Sophie's 3rd evening, as we shared a bottle of wine on my tiny hotel balcony, she grew unusually quiet. "What's on your mind?" I prompted gently. She hesitated, then said, "I've been thinking about something Grandpa said at the graduation party, about how he wished he'd been more present in my life when I was younger." "And how did that make you feel?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. "Conflicted," she admitted. "Part of me appreciates that he acknowledges his absence. But another part feels like he's rewriting history, casting himself as the regretful father figure, when in reality, he chose to be absent. He chose Catherine over his family. Over you. I sipped my wine, considering my response. People are complicated. Sophie, your grandfather made choices I didn't agree with, choices that hurt me deeply. But he's still your grandfather, and he does love you in his way. But his way involves expensive gifts and showy gestures, not actual presence or support, she said with unexpected bitterness. Not like you, Nana. You were always there, for every school play, every soccer game, every heartbreak. You showed up. That matters more than any car or fancy party. Her words touched me deeply. Thank you for seeing that, I said softly. For a long time, I wondered if anyone did. I'm sorry it took me so long, she replied, reaching for my hand. And I'm sorry about your birthday. We should have been there. I should have been there. In that moment, on a balcony in Paris with the Eiffel Tower twinkling in the distance, the last of my hurt over the forgotten birthday dinner finally dissolved. Not because it hadn't mattered, but because Sophie's recognition of its importance and her sincere regret healed something broken inside me. We're here now, I said simply, and that's what counts. On her final morning in Paris, Sophie presented me with a small, beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a delicate watercolor of the Seine at sunset, painted by one of the artists we had watched in Montmartre. For your new kitchen, she explained, so you'll always remember this trip and how it changed things between us. As we embraced goodbye at the airport, Sophie whispered, Thank you, Nana. Not just for Paris, but for showing me that it's never too late to start living on your own terms. I watched her disappear into the security line, this remarkable young woman who was just beginning her adult journey. For the first time, I felt confident that whatever path she chose, it would be with clear eyes and an open heart. My own journey, I realized, was far from over. Paris had been a beginning, not an end. The first step into a new phase of life where I would continue to discover who Eleanor Winters truly was, beyond the roles of mother and grandmother that had defined me for so long. As I left the airport and headed back to the city for my final days in France, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For Paris, for Sophie, for the birthday dinner that no one attended, which had ultimately set me free. Returning to my small town after 2 transformative weeks in Paris, I braced myself for the inevitable letdown, the return to ordinary life, after extraordinary experiences. But as the taxi turned onto my street, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. My entire family gathered on my front porch, a welcome home banner hanging from the eaves. Surprise! They called in unison as I stepped from the car. Lily bounded down the steps first, wrapping me in an enthusiastic hug. Nana! We've been waiting forever! Your flight was late! Marcus followed, taking my suitcase from the driver. How was the trip home? Are you exhausted? Olivia approached more sedately, but her smile was genuine. Welcome back, Mom. We've missed you. James stood behind them, snapping photos. For the family album, he explained with a wink. I was genuinely touched by their welcome, by the effort they had made to mark my return. But nothing prepared me for what awaited inside my house. My modest living room had been transformed. The worn furniture was gone, replaced by a beautiful new sofa and matching chairs in the shade of blue I had always admired. The walls, once beige, now glowed with a warm cream color. And most stunning of all, my kitchen, my outdated, functional but uninspiring kitchen, had been completely renovated. Gleaming granite countertops, new stainless steel appliances, custom cabinets in a rich cherry wood, exactly as I had envisioned but hadn't expected to see for at least another month. What is all this? I asked, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. We wanted to surprise you, Olivia explained. The contractors were scheduled to start while you were away, but we convinced them to push up the timeline so it would be finished before you got back. And we all helped, Marcus added proudly. I installed the backsplash myself. I picked the cabinet hardware, Lily chimed in. It's incredible, I managed, overwhelmed by their thoughtfulness. But how did you know exactly what I wanted? Sophie, Olivia smiled. She FaceTimed us from Paris and showed us pictures of the kitchens you liked in the apartments you passed. She said you kept commenting on the blue accents and the open shelving. Concept. I hadn't even realized Sophie had been paying such close attention to my casual comments during our walks through Parisian neighborhoods. And look, Lily said, leading me to a prominent spot on the kitchen wall where Sophie's gift, the watercolor of the Seine at sunset, had been professionally framed and hung. Sophie sent it ahead so we could have it ready for you. Tears filled my eyes as I took it all in. Not just the beautiful renovations, but the thought and care behind them. The genuine effort to give me something I truly wanted, something that reflected my tastes and preferences rather than their assumptions about what a grandmother should want or need. There's one more thing, Marcus said, handing me an envelope. From all of us. Inside was a gift certificate for a series of cooking classes at a culinary school downtown. French cuisine, with an emphasis on the pastries and breads I had so enjoyed in Paris. We thought you might want to recreate some of the foods you discovered there, Olivia explained, and maybe teach us how to make them too. This is too much, I said, genuinely overwhelmed. All of it, the renovation, the furniture, the classes. It's not nearly enough, Olivia replied, suddenly serious. Mom, while you were gone, we had a lot of conversations as a family about how we've taken you for granted, about how we've failed to see you as a person with your own dreams and desires. Sophie's reports from Paris made us realize how much we've missed by viewing you only as our mother or grandmother, not as Eleanor. We want to do better, Marcus added simply. If you'll let us. The sincerity in their faces moved me deeply. This wasn't just about a renovated kitchen or thoughtful gifts. It was about recognition of my personhood, my value beyond my familial roles, my right to a life that included them, but wasn't limited to them. That evening, we shared a meal around my new dining table, a feast of takeout from my favorite local restaurant, accompanied by a French wine Olivia had researched specifically for the occasion. As we ate and talked and laughed, I felt a new equilibrium establishing itself, a family finding its way back to each other, but with healthier boundaries and clearer sight. Later, as the family prepared to leave, Lily hung back, twisting her fingers nervously. Nana, she said hesitantly, I was wondering, would you teach me to knit? I know you mentioned wanting to start again, and I thought maybe we could learn together. Her request, so simple, so connecting, was perhaps the most meaningful gift of all. Not an obligation or an expectation, but an invitation to share something we might both enjoy. I would love that, Lily, I said, hugging her close. After everyone left, I sat alone in my beautiful new kitchen, Sophie's Parisian watercolor glowing in the soft lighting. My $1 million fund for the grandchildren was still largely intact, still earmarked for their futures, but with more thoughtful provisions for how and when they would receive it. My relationship with my family was healing, evolving into something more balanced and mutually respectful. And I was changed in ways both subtle and profound. Paris had awakened something in me, a curiosity, an independence, a willingness to prioritize my own joy. But the true transformation had begun on my 70th birthday, sitting alone at a table set for a celebration that never happened. That disappointment, painful as it was, had cracked open a door I might never otherwise have found. A door to a life, lived on my own terms, with those I loved beside me, not above me. As I unpacked my suitcase that night, I carefully removed the journal Nancy had given me, now filled with observations and insights from my time in Paris. On the final page, I had written a quote from a book I'd found in Shakespeare and Company. It's never too late to be what you might have been. I smiled, running my fingers over the words. If my 70th year had taught me anything, It was the profound truth of that statement. The grandchildren who had ditched me on my birthday had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of all, the courage to become, finally and fully, myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.